I'm going to be talking about all acceptance, faith, and trust as we age. So, in one sense, the aging process is just a continuation of the training we have been doing up until now. And a few weeks ago, I did a talk on all acceptance, and I mentioned that one of the ways we can learn all acceptance is by paying attention to the small things that frustrate or annoy us without grumbling. And this would include the aches and pains, the limitation, the forgetfulness of old age. If we can't accept the smaller things that arise as a result of aging, how will we ever accept what is more difficult? And I also mentioned at the class I did before that we don't try to accept something. We don't need to feel acceptance. We sit with whatever is arising in the situation. And it may at first be the unwillingness to accept something that seems to be unacceptable. Now, in thinking about this class, of course, it brought up a lot of things for me about aging and death, and I thought, I don't know what aging and death mean to me. I am 72 years old, and I guess I'm an old person, but I don't feel like an old person. The body wears down, but the spirit, the Buddha nature, is still there helping us in all circumstances if we turn towards it and let it help us. The Buddha nature does not grow old. With the increasing difficulties of old age with the body and mind, we can slip into being an old person and turn away from the real challenges. But we don't have to. We can stay alive and bright no matter what is going on with us. Maybe I'm lucky that my body has been wearing down since I was in my mid-30s, when I started having back trouble, which has continued to get worse in some ways over the years. So it's not like suddenly I'm starting to have physical problems. I've had them for a long time. So I've had to learn to accept that and my limitations. I had ankle problems that threatened to leave me not able to walk, and I had to accept that. Now my left hip is giving me trouble. When I first started having back trouble, it frightened me. Now I accept it. I don't remember when the shift took place. I started to be concerned about my memory in my 40s. And of course now it's quite a bit worse. There may be more challenges as we age, but there were challenges when we were young. My body and mind are aging, but so far there hasn't been anything that I haven't been able to accept. I hope that when more physical and mental difficulties arise, I will be able to accept them as well. I hope that I can let the aging process teach me and help me to trust and take refuge more deeply in that which goes beyond birth and death. And the training as we age can be preparing us for our own death if we allow everything to teach us. And I wrote here, what choice do we have? The options aren't great. The prospect of our own death may be totally unacceptable at present, and here is my advice to you. I have found, for me anyway, that I can't try to face death and try to come to terms with it. However, we will come to terms with it if we train with what is in front of us right now. We can use the opportunities that we have right now to learn to live with uncertainty, to let go of wanting to control our lives, to let go of the self, to face the fact that we will die if that arises, and to not turn away from fear. Let the worries, fears, etc. help you to look within and take refuge more deeply. we can allow each moment to help us to have faith in that which goes beyond birth and death. And the more we can look at fear now as it arises and sit still with it, the better able we will be to face the fear when we are dying. And we have no idea, I certainly have no idea what I'm going to be like when I'm dying or what the dying process is about. But all I can do right now is train with what I have in front of me. The first time that I had surgery was for a fibroid tumor on my uterus. I didn't know at the time of the surgery that it wasn't cancerous. I was very scared of what it might be and of the surgery itself. I felt I had to face the possibility of dying, so I tried to face it and come to terms with it, but it didn't arise when I was meditating. One of the monks told me I could only sit with what was arising and I couldn't force anything. So that's what I did. I continued to meditate. I continued to look within. And as I was being wheeled into the operating room, I felt myself surrender to something deeper. And I knew that whatever happened would be okay. And in that surrender, I was not afraid. About 9 years ago, my cat died. Then my mother died. And then my nurse practitioner thought I might have something serious. And I happened to be going out to our hermitage to do a retreat at this time. And Reverend Master Mann, I hope you don't mind my... Reverend Master Mann said to me that when a door opens to impermanence, to take advantage of that opportunity and to look at it. And so the retreat was actually very helpful. And turned out I didn't have anything serious, but it was a good opportunity. The door is opening for all of us as we age and become more infirm. I spoke with one of our elderly lay trainees who has had a lot of physical problems, and she said that the changes that take place in body and mind are just ways we're taught the Dharma, and there is nothing to worry about. She also mentioned that she had a near-death experience and that it was comfortable, reassuring, and normal. And I hope she doesn't mind that I mention this here. The training as we age can be preparing us for death if we allow everything to teach us. And as Reverend Master Jiyu once wrote about, practice uncomplaining all acceptance. In the process of aging, we can no longer afford to look away, and this is a blessing. We can no longer afford not to have faith in ourselves, because when we come face to face with our own death, we have to look within and trust, and this is a blessing. Aspect of our koans that we've been able to hide from in various ways will need to be looked at as we age and approach a time when we might die. So things that we have had difficulty with, not the aging process and the prospect of death, but other aspects of our koan that we haven't been willing to look at, we may now be willing to look at, because in the end we have to look at it. So that's a blessing too. We can no longer afford to hold on to the self, the hurts we feel, the anger, the resentments. We need to let go over and over again and keep reminding ourselves to do this. And when I was preparing the talk, I was feeling some resentments, and I thought, okay, I got to let them go. And what I found is when we let go of our resentments and our complaining, the deeper aspects of our koans arise, which may be difficult, but which is good, which is very good. And I want to read from the beginning of How to Grow a Lotus Blossom, the very first beginning, where it says, "When you come face to face with the end of the road of life, as the term is understood in this world, it should be obvious that worldly distractions, such as are seen here. And there, if for those of you who've seen How to Grow a Lotus Blossom, there's a frontispiece that has all different kinds of worldly attractions. Culminating in the altar of what passes for religion, indicate the unsatisfactoriness of the human state. The finding of the Dharma cloud as a result of going on beyond ordinary religion and climbing the glass mountain, which she talks about at the beginning of this book, takes those who essay it beyond isms, sects, and religious facades to that which brings total fulfillment. It is not until we are willing to go on beyond our greatest fears, which ordinary religions attempt to comfort and allay, rather than teaching us how to overcome them, that we are able to find truth. Thus, we have to be willing to go on beyond everything if we would be one with what the Buddha in the Udana scripture calls the unborn, undying, unchanging, uncreated. This is what should be understood by the terms eternal and what Keizan Zenji calls the Lord of the House. Both these terms are used in this book. Scriptures and ceremonies point the way, and pure meditation, i.e. zazen, leads to the realization of the unborn, undying, unchanging, uncreated. So the full title of this book is How to Grow a Lotus Blossom, or How a Zen Buddhist Prepares for Death. And we don't try then to look for fear to overcome. We just are with fear when it arises and don't run away from it. This is easier said than done, and it's certainly not pleasant. We had a monk here once who left after being a monk for a number of years, and left in a difficult place where she was angry at us and angry at certain monks and felt a lot of resentments. And she went back to lay life. And after being a lay person again for a long time, she developed lung cancer, which had metastasized to her brain. And she said as soon as she found this out, a door opened up, and it was a door to the unborn. She found herself embraced by the unborn. She was in a place of utter peace and stillness. And she knew that if she was to be able to stay in that place of peace and stillness, she had to forgive, and she had to make peace with Shasta Abbey and with all the monks here. And this was not easy for her, but she did want to stay in that place. So she came down, and she had tea with quite a few of us, and she made peace with us, and we made peace with her, and it was lovely. It was really a wonderful teaching. So how we live life is how we will die. If we are willing to face ourselves and the unknown, then it will be easier to face the unknown in death. If we cannot run away from our fears in life, then it will be easier to face the fear of death. If we continue to train, which I know you all are doing, to be kind and generous and compassionate, then we will have no regrets. And in preparing this talk, I was reminded of a journal article which I really liked, which is from 1993, and it's one that the former Reverend Alden had put in the journal, and it was written by a monk that Reverend Master Jiyu knew in Malaysia, Sumangalo, the Venerable Sumangalo, and it's called The Four Scrolls. It's quite long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to give you a brief synopsis and then read the end of it. So this monk went to a monastery in Peking, and he was shown in by the, we call the acting guest master, to a room, and was told that his meal would come soon, and he was welcomed, and the monk was very peaceful. And he was sitting in this room, and he felt this utter stillness in this room. And a verse came to him, and he wrote it down. And then the monk came back into the room and brought his meal. And he said, "This pavilion is called the Sound of Silence," he informed me. And suddenly I spilled a large spoonful of soup in my lap, the sound of silence. When my meal was finished, the novices gathered the dishes into a basket and with humble bows departed. It was so obvious that the older monk had high regard for his younger spiritual brothers and expected great things of them in the fullness of time. Calmly expropriating by Sajaguru's votive light, the prefect asked me to view some of the objects in the pavilion. Standing before the scroll painting of the road, he informed me, "This is the lonely road trodden by the feet of those who are about to die." And Sumangalo had seen the scroll with the road, but he hadn't seen what was on the scroll. It was probably in Chinese anyway. Then taking the light into another alcove, he illumined the second scroll, depicting what seemed to be a phantom gate. "This is the gate of death," he told me, "and it is unseen by all save those who are about to cross through its portals." In another corner, a third scroll awaited us. It portrayed a wraith-like figure seemingly in the act of parting a curtain, and with reluctance. My guide spoke on. "This is the invisible but strong veil each departed soul must push aside and look upon his own true face in the afterlife." Then we came to the fourth scroll, an age-yellowed rectangle of silk, bordered in long faded brocade and covered with exquisite characters from some gifted hand long gone. Slowly my preceptor translated the scroll's message into halting but easily understandable French, given here in English. "Death's road is a lonely road. It is lonely in its very nature. Though 1,000 die at the same moment, yet each soul traverses death's road alone. Death's gate is unseen by the hail and is unreal to them. It is very real to those who must pass through its portals, and again, each must go through alone. When the road has been traversed and the gate has been passed, there remains the loneliest part of death's drama, and to some a most terrifying part. This is the parting of the veil, which throughout our earth life has kept us from seeing our own true face. But part the veil we must, and look upon our own true face we must, no matter how horrifying the ordeal. Each soul must look upon himself as he really was in his earthly life, not as he fondly believed himself to be. Even the stoutest hearts flinch before this veil, but no soul escapes opening the dread veil and looking upon himself, denuded of all the trappings of self-delusion. And many there be who, after viewing the awful face of self, cast themselves down into hell." The prefect's voice faded into the absorbent silence. He turned his pale, thin face to me, and suddenly I realized he was tubercular and probably in an advanced stage. A bright fleck of blood was in each corner of his lips. He spoke again. "Soon I shall travel the road that some find lonely. I shall not note the loneliness. Soon I shall pass through the gate without fear, and still shall not feel alone. And I shall part the veil without dread, and still with no feeling of being alone. For I am sure I shall look upon Buddha nature as being my own true face." So I hope that's cheering for those of us who are training, and not that our training really matters and will really matter at the time of death. In the years that have passed, I have often thought of the serene prefect of hospitality, and always with the unshakable conviction that when it came his time to set out on the journey, for him the road was not lonely, and the gate in the vale held no terrors whatever, but only a continuance of that peace which he already knew in his earthly life. May he finally come into perfect Buddhahood. And now the verses that Samangalo had written down. Let the reader remember that they were written before I saw the 4 scrolls or even knew of their existence. If any should feel that some apology is needed for the unpretentiousness of the poem, I can only reply that the verses are not mine. And this is what he wrote. Alone. There is a lonely road down which each one of us sometime must go alone. There is an unseen gate through which we each must pass sometime to worlds unknown alone. There is a veil invisible. We severally must part sometime and stand before the face of self alone.
So I'm going to be talking about aging with joy. This retreat is on the theme of training with aging, and most of us I see before me are in our 60s and 70s. So we're survivors. There's a cause for joy. We've made it thus far. The talk will be on aging with joy. However, it won't be of the "you're only as old as you feel" variety. It's partly inspired by the Book of Joy by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu with Douglas Abrams. And in terms of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop, they've both had to face life-threatening and extremely challenging situations in their lives, and they've both found the way to come through those challenges, not with bitterness or despair, but with joy. So, aging with joy, we don't have a choice whether to age or not. Those who die young don't have the privilege of aging. However, we do have a choice about our approach. In general, we can experience aging as a downhill process full of aches and pains and memory loss, with nothing left to us but death. Or we can choose a joyful approach, aging as a fine opportunity to enjoy the fruits of the wisdom that we've gained over our years of practice and life, and especially as an opportunity to turn our hearts toward the source of all compassion, love, and wisdom. Gratitude for this opportunity, simple gratitude for each day's life of training, goes a long way towards bringing joy to our hearts. And in the words of the Theravadan monk Ajahn Sucitto, putting appropriate energy into what you know is worthy. What you know is worthy will give rise to joy. And we all know that our practice is worthy and that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are worthy. Now, some points about aging with joy. This first point, Reverend Amanda mentioned last night. Maturing into so-called old age means leaving much useless and harmful baggage behind. We just can't carry it anymore, as Reverend Amanda mentioned. For how many years of youth did I blame my parents, my teachers, and the system for my suffering? Thanks to the practice of meditation and the precepts, the ability to blame either myself or others has been slipping away, leaving me more free to accept responsibility for the suffering I cause myself or not. Maturity can also mean a decrease in the drive to prove oneself. We no longer need to show the world that we're the best whatever, parent, engineer, sculptor, monk, Training ourselves through the years, we learn contentment, acceptance of ourselves as we are, with the gifts that we have. We come to know what is enough. And we can be most grateful for the decrease in hormone-based melodrama. The older we grow, the more we come to appreciate the families, friendships, and community that have enriched our lives through the years. I have a couple of friends I've known for more than 50 years, and I've known some of you for a long time, too. Even when I'm unable to meet and talk with you because of the pandemic, I know you're there. The fourfold Sangha, male and female monks, female and male lay trainees, holds us up as we go on, helping us to find our way through the dark times, as well as joining us in celebration of the bright ones. My master and some of my old Sangha friends have died, and I've sat with their bodies in the Buddha Hall, or attended their funerals, or paid my respects from a distance. Their lives and death have continued to enhance my life, clear up to this very day. One of the joys of aging is the broader perspective we've gained over many years of experience. Think of an infant. Its sole concern is hunger or a dirty diaper or a bellyache. As far as I know, an infant doesn't yet have the experience to perceive beyond these things. Or think of a teenager whose primary concern is, does she or he love me or not? Or will I get into the best college or not? With reflection, we can see how our view has broadened. One's view of the world, the view one chooses, changes the way one feels, instead of the habitual way of having feelings determine our response. This is a way of using the thinking mind to influence our spiritual practice. Look with the eyes of Buddha, and you will see the heart of Buddha. Older and wiser is a phrase I've heard throughout my life, often in reference to learning from problems or mistakes. However, it can simply point to the wisdom that blooms forth from the life of training. It doesn't mean spending time philosophizing or mastering the concepts of quantum physics. The wisdom that arises as we train ourselves over the years is the capacity to see things as they truly are, and to discern and respond to the needs of the moment. It's the wisdom that recognizes impermanence and knows it as a friend, that recognizes suffering and turns toward the escape from suffering, that understands that we are not separate little me's, but essential parts of something far greater than that. And we come to know for a fact that the universe is not answerable to our personal will. So these are some ways that we can train ourselves into aging with joy, gratitude, relinquishing blame, taking refuge, appreciating a broader perspective, appreciation of wisdom. So what about death? Great Master Dogen says, "Time flies quicker than an arrow, and life passes with greater transience than dew. Quickly the body passes away, in a moment life is gone." I suspect that fears around death occur to most of us at times. And I, for one, remember being more fearful of death at the age of 10 than I am now. If only I had known I would make it to 73. It would have saved a lot of grief. Again, in the words of Great Master Dogen, the most important question for all Buddhists is how to understand birth and death completely. For then, should you be able to find the Buddha within birth and death, they both vanish. Not only each birthday, but each and every day brings me closer to the realization that the time left to me is growing shorter and therefore more precious. This means I can suffer in fear of the death that isn't actually here yet, or I can marvel at spring's bright yellow butterfly and autumn's dried yellow leaves with fresh eyes. I can taste the subtle flavors in the stew, and I can drink plain water as if it were the nectar of the Dharma. I can remember more than 60 years ago, sitting in classrooms, watching the hands of the big clock drag themselves from 1 minute to the next, how much less so the hours, with the dull, relentless future stretching out into infinity. Now, the seasons fly by. Whether we live to be 90 or die tomorrow, whether the temperature is warm or cold, each moment can become a precious jewel when we keep impermanence in mind and turn toward the source of all goodness. And then, when death comes, we're ready to take the next step. Finally, and this is the big one, aging with joy means more time for our religious practice, keeping true to the source, turning ourselves not towards a future death, but to the present eternal truth, that there is an unborn, undying, uncreated, unchanging. And because of this, there is liberation from suffering, the great matter for which we train. Aging with joy means entrusting ourselves to this truth with the confidence that it is always with us. Our memories may falter, arms and legs weaken. It is always with us. Whether well or sick, brightly alive or dying, as Reverend Master Jiyu phrased it, our work is to turn towards it. Our work, no matter what our age or condition, is to entrust ourselves to the truth, to Vairochana Buddha, Dharma itself, to the great matter for which we train. Whatever you choose to call it is not important. What's important is to keep turning towards it.